Think about NWA.
Alright, so ours was, our students who are exposed to more violent video games more likely to get in physical fights. And our graph right here shows us that, yeah, it's true. And our correlation value is a 0.97%, which is, yes, that it's a positive, and yeah, it's going up, the graph, or still going.
Alright, okay, so ours was the same question. Do youth violence rates increase as with video game sales? And ours suggested that it had a strong negative correlation because we had an R value of negative 94. And for one of the great examples on here was in 1996, there were only 15 video games sold, and there was the highest rate of youth offenses. The cumulative number was 175. 175,000 people harmed.
So which study is right?
We are.
I don't know. So what are they trying to say? What are they trying to say that way?
We're saying that there's that violence, the video games have nothing to do with
The video games and the violence correlation have nothing to do with each other. Go Paul.
I want to sum it up first.
I just summed it up perfectly.
Say it again.
There's no correlation. There's a negative correlation.
What'd you say?
There's a negative correlation that they have nothing to do with it. In fact, it shows that video games actually decrease violence.
So what are you trying to say is that?
But NWA
video games.
They want to hear you. One at a time. Go ahead.
Video games have nothing to do with violence.
Nothing to do means there's no correlation.
Yeah.
Obviously, it has to do something if you guys got a correlation.
It's violence rates decrease as video game sales increase.
Why?
That's totally fine.
So violence.
That's what this says. What do you think?
Because that's what our data says.
Okay, Ms. Sosa, who we talking about?
Yeah, sure. Do you have a why?
Yeah, we have why. Because right here in our data, it shows that even the group of kids that was like, we don't play video games, they're,
We can't see it.
you can't see, well, then come over here and look at it. It shows that,
Cut your hair.
that they still have a 15% of chance of getting into a fight.
Even
Wait,
if
you're
they play
saying that people who
video
didn't play video games still have a 15% chance?
Show your group. Show.
Is that what
Your
you're
here,
saying?
look, come on, your whole group. Come on.
That's still a high
Right here.
chance.
Blondie, look at the grade.
Where's my NWA?
Yeah, look at the sleeve.
No,
Here,
I'm
no,
not
no,
She said, come over
I play video games.
She said, come look at it.
I play Mortal Kombat. I can beat your ass.
Where's Pepe?
So look, here's their data.
Your land's Rojas.
I pro. Like, I'll take a look.
It's actually Jose.
Bro, I go off at sub-zero. I'll coach you at it right now.
Okay. Are you guys done talking about it?
No. Also, every single kid, or whatever you want to call them, or whoever played the video games, have a 12.6% of exposure getting into a fight. Every single time they play a video game.
Yeah, I just got burned.
Yeah, but there could also be external reasons for them getting into those fights.
But they're still playing the video games, because they said that they're playing video games, so video games still have something to do with it.
Yeah,
Well,
but
It could be other things
Bars.
involved, but
They just
they're
happen
still
to be
playing
playing
video
video
games.
games.
currently video game sales increase every year, so the it would be very common for anybody to get their hands on video games.
Well, I don't have
And the
games
majority
and
of
stuff.
people
That's
in
what
this
I mean.
world have played video games. So that
I don't have.
So,
yeah,
so
could be
Paul's
really
making the
totally
point that since video games are more prevalent, does that mean everyone's playing them?
I'm just saying that it's more common
More
for
people
people
are
to
playing
play.
them, so
We're not
then
talking
that
about
means there's still more of a chance that
Yeah,
people.
but more children are exposed to that.
It's playing
You're
GTA
talking
5.
about, you're talking about
All the
not
GTA
playing.
Can I make a
point against
Listen, no.
It's playing Guitar Hero.
That would cause real rage.
Listen to Quinn. Listen to Quinn.
Can I make a point against both teams?
No.
No.
I'm not asking you, I'm asking Ms. Stolte. So, my point here in all of this is that I don't think either collections of data is accurate because A, we don't know how this data was collected, B, we don't know in what way it was collected. We don't know if the test subjects were put through the experience of playing the video games and had never played them before, or if they were regular video game players. We don't know what their mental states were, who they were, or in what way they might have been affected by the video games, or what violent video games they were playing. So we can't accurately judge off of either data table whether video games affect somebody's anger or not.
Okay.
Okay, so
So,
hold on.
Yeah, we already know that.
That's what we
Look,
Oh, Andrew, I love you.
wait, what did he say? What did he say?
It's saying that the point of this is to argue our thing, not to be accurate. Shots have been fired. It's on camera. We'll stop.
The video games sold and violent offenses, that's overall data.
Yeah.
That, it's not a question, that is how many video games were sold, and that is how many offenses were documented. Okay? Here is looking at a random sample, so that means pockets of kids from across the United States, different income status. A random sample is random. They took all these random people, and as they studied it, that's what they found. They found the kids who played more video games got into more fights.
And even a 12% though, like you said, 12% of kids who have been exposed to video games will get in fights. That's not a very large statistic when it comes to most of the kids. I mean,
Also, kids are normally violent. Before they even are exposed to games,
I
they
thought,
have
I
a
thought like, I was
50%
walking
chance
home
to
yesterday at
fight.
the match, I saw like two little kids.
I don't want to hear a story.
Everybody else laughing.
Hold on.
Wasn't that you?
No.
There's probably magical points.
So, do you guys really believe, so now I'm asking, do you guys really believe your data?
Yeah.
Our data, it was like
Do
right
you
there.
guys really believe your data?
I just want to go home.
No, you don't?
I believe it. I got a
So,
wife
here's
and
my
kids.
answer. Believe this.
Yes,
It depends on like, what is that? What is that? What
I
does that
stand
say?
I don't believe it's the full information, but I believe.
So here's my question.
I don't believe video
Shush,
games make
shush,
people.
shush. You can't argue that this wasn't a study. This was a study. These are really the numbers they came up with. What you can argue about, so you can't argue, no, you didn't find that. This is literally their study.
Who's
What
there?
you can argue,
If it's true or not.
no. Okay, listen. You can't just argue like, yeah, well, I don't think you asked. I saw a kid who he played video games all the time. Like, that's not an argument. You can argue that you think, because they put out this study saying this is the cause. They said this exposure is the cause. That's what this is saying. That's what you can argue. So listen, if you want to argue it, listen means don't talk, generally speaking. Like stop interrupting your teacher. That's usually what listen means. Confusing, Sue Lady? What is confusing about that? Listen, zip. So if you have an argument for that you think this actually isn't the cause, then you need to provide an example of what is. So if you think, well, I don't think that kids who play more video games, it causes them to be more violent, what is the cause then? What causes kids who play more video games to be more violent if it's not the fact that they're playing more video games?
Social abandonment.
So go ahead.
Okay, so if a kid is even allowed to play video games for like 9 hours, it clearly shows that their parents are not that involved in their life.
What's they playing video games with their parents?
When their parents have like no job,
Okay?
It's FIFA and violent.
unless their
Hold
job
on.
is to play video
Hey.
games.
Claudia, go ahead.
Oh, but I would say, but nowadays, like, with technology and everything, like, parents just tend to, like, put technology right in front of the kids, so at such a young age, you start developing that sort of thing, and if they see such violence, or actions, yeah, they're gonna start believing it themselves, and then they're gonna start doing it, their brain is gonna,
Hardwire?
yeah,
Concepts of-
they're gonna do it when they're
But I have a better outlier.
younger.
Rodney?
When they
But the
get
kids
older.
are like 12 to 17, so they're like less impressionable. Like if they're like 6, that's understandable.
Did you get in a
But
fight?
this is our growing age.
So he's,
This is what we learn
hold on.
Regular personality.
Typical for
set.
Exactly.
So if we're gonna be violent, we're already, this is only gonna increase or decrease. Or add on to what is already set. So if the kids are already violent, then, playing video games isn't gonna affect it. It's like, I don't remember.
Quinn?
If we're going to assume this data is correct in any way whatsoever, we actually have to also assume that these kids were not violent whatsoever before they started playing video games.
They don't.
We're not talking about that, we're just talking about this.
I'm still making my
So,
point.
so just thinking outside the box.
Let him finish.
Oh my god.
I'm still making my point. So if we are assuming that, then this is correct. But seeing as if we're not assuming that, then this data, in my opinion, isn't correct, simply because we are also not including the different outliers. For instance, in what environment they're being raised or in what environment they're playing these games. Or say they're abused and they're playing violent video games. It might not be the video games, it might be abused. I don't think the study actually went and took in each individual person's or child's individual raising or what environment they lived in or what kind of mental state or physical state they were in when they actually did this study. Therefore, you can't accurately gauge which of them were affected by the video games or not.
So what are you trying to say?
Look, I just
I'm
think
saying that
that
you have to judge this on an individual
Right.
basis.
So look-
Each individual
I
person is
think video games don't cause violence, and if you disagree with me, I'll have to attack you.
Hey, so look, he plays a lot of video games, just, it's okay. So,
I don't play a lot of video games.
hold on. The point here being, you can make numbers, say anything you want. We just saw two studies that said two different things. What's important to think about is there really, does that show a cause, or does that show just a link? That's what you wanna think about.
Clean up this room.
It shows like